Senator Bernie Sanders is on the line with us. Senator Sanders, of course, the chair of the Senate Budget Committee, one of the most powerful committees in all of Congress, two-time U.S. presidential candidate for 11 years every Friday on this program. Senator Sanders, welcome back. You wrote a brilliant piece for The Guardian titled, "Democrats Shouldn't Focus Only on Abortion in the Midterms. That's a Mistake." Can you elaborate?
Yeah, I can. And Tom, it's great to be with you and keep up the work you're doing.
Thank you.
Look, here's the issue. This is, in my view, the most important midterm election in our lifetimes. And if people think, no one's running for president, it's not that important, they don't have to vote, they are dead wrong. This election is about whether we preserve American democracy, whether women have the right to control their own bodies, whether we move aggressively to deal with the existential threat of climate, whether working families in this country get a fair shake. That's what this election is about. And what I wrote about is that, yes, of course, we have got to be as vigorous and strong as we can to override the terrible Supreme Court decision on Roe v. Wade, and we have got to make it certain that it is women in this country who control their own bodies and not state government. But in addition to that, what we have also got to do is make it clear that if you are a working class person, if you're making $12, $15 an hour, if you can't afford health care, if you can't afford to send your kid to college, if you can't afford child care, if you're sick and tired of corporate greed, you can't vote for Republicans because they are on the wrong side of all of those issues. And it bothers me that Democrats have not been as vigorous as they should in taking on Republicans on these economic issues. Just one more example. It is no great secret that Mitch McConnell and other Republicans want to cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. In fact, we need to expand Social Security, improve benefits by doing away with, right now, the limitation on taxation for Social Security. Right now, you make $1 million, you pay the same amount as you make $140,000. That is totally absurd. So my point was, Tom, that yes, we've got to make sure that we defend the woman's right to choose, that we fight for American democracy, but I think the way we can win votes is making it clear how reactionary Republicans are on economic issues.
Senator, the right-wing Republicans have been plastering the word freedom all over everything. Freedom works, freedom this, freedom that. I remember Franklin, I don't remember it literally, but, Franklin Roosevelt famously said, an old judge once said, "A necessitous man is not a free man," that you're not free if you're hungry or homeless. Do you want to elaborate on that and how Democrats might be able to take that word freedom or the concept and elaborate on it?
Yeah, what Roosevelt talked about, and he talked about it in 1944 in the State of the Union address that didn't get a whole lot of publicity because it was in the middle of World War II. But what he said was a very profound statement. He said, yeah, in so many words. He said, yeah, we have a Bill of Rights, we have a Constitution, you have freedom of expression, freedom of speech, you can vote for whoever you want to vote for, freedom of religion, all of that's very, very important. But are you free right now if you're working for starvation wages, trying to figure out how you can feed your kids? Are you free if you get sick and you can't afford to go to a doctor? What does freedom mean if you're a single mom and you can't afford childcare and you are having to figure out how you keep your job and take care of your kids? Are you free if you are a senior citizen, unable to heat your home in the wintertime? And the truth is right now, Tom, unbelievably, in the richest country in the history of the world, 60% of our people are living paycheck to paycheck. And what that means, it's not just economic anxiety. This expands to emotional anxiety. If you're worried about how you're going to pay your rent next month because your landlord has substantially increased your rent, you can't afford to buy food because food prices are going up, can't afford to fill up your car with gas because gas prices are going up, you're living under tremendous anxiety. And that often translates, by the way, into physical illness. Stress causes illness. So I think what Roosevelt is saying is very profound and important. Freedom is not just the right to vote. Yeah, that is enormously important. Freedom is not just the right to express your point of view. Enormously important. We all defend the Bill of Rights, the Constitution. What Roosevelt was talking about is that economic rights are human rights as well, and we've got to fight for those.
We have a handful of major corporations that are showing the largest profits in the history of the world. We have the largest producer of oil in the world openly taking the side of Vladimir Putin, Saudi Arabia, openly taking Putin's side. And it's almost as if, I don't know if this is a paranoid fantasy on my part or not, that Donald Trump or Jared Kushner, who's going to deal with the Saudis, reached out to Mohammed bin Salman and said, hey, help us screw the Republicans. Let's jack up gas prices. Reached out to the CEOs of the biggest oil companies, one of whom was, Trump's Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson, and said, hey, help us really damage the Democrats. We need to jack up inflation really hard here. Whether I'm, presenting a conspiracy theory that's nuts or not, just the fact that this situation is as fragile as it is and is vulnerable to that kind of manipulation should be something our government should be looking at, is it not?
Yes. And, what do they say, Tom? Just because you're paranoid doesn't mean that you're crazy, right?
Yeah, or that they're not out to get you, right? Exactly.
Look, one of the issues that you just touched on, which I think we don't talk enough about, the Republicans talk about inflation. Well, inflation is a huge issue. We've got to understand what causes inflation. And part of that, indisputably, is the unprecedented level of corporate greed that we are now experiencing. So are gas prices too high? Yeah, they are. Look at the profit margin of ExxonMobil and the other major oil companies, and they're enjoying record-breaking profits. Are food prices too high? Yeah, they are. Take a look at what the major food companies are doing now in terms of their profit levels, extremely high. Are prescription drug costs too high? Absolutely. Take a look at the pharmaceutical industry and the kind of enormous profits that they are making right now. So I think one of the things that Democrats should be campaigning on is the level of corporate greed that now exists. In my own view, I believe we should initiate a windfall profits tax.
Like the Brits just did.
Like what?
Like the Brits just did. They just did this in Britain. The Conservatives.
Conservative government in England imposed that. We would go further. But you got to tell the corporate world that in this really difficult moment in American history, we got the war in Ukraine, you got supply chains that are broken, you got major labor shortages in parts of the country, that at this particular moment, you know what? You cannot have these outrageous profit margins because you're raising prices to a level that working people can't afford.
Yeah.
So, that's an area that I think we should explore. In terms of Saudi Arabia, look, we have had... All right.
I'm sorry, we're hitting the break. You got a few seconds here? Go for it.
If we had an unholy alliance with a dictatorial monarchy there for a very long time, it is time to rethink that relationship.
Amen. Senator Sanders, it's always so great having you on the program. Thank you so much for dropping in today.